All right, folks, as we enter 2022, I think it's important to reflect on the past year, on 2021. Just what an amazing year for films in general. For my channel, it started in 2021, and I'm proud to bring it into the new year. This is a second year running. Who knows how much longer it'll last. I always hoped it would get far, but I never truly suspected if it would get this far. But here we are. Let's rank the top 10 of 2021. All right, folks, first some honorable mentions, just because this list has shifted so much over time, honestly, more than I could say. And I think it wouldn't be fair without mentioning the top 15 at least. Don't Look Up, really, just, this one's received a lot of discourse, but I'm with the camp that thinks it's a funny satire at the end of the day. The message is on the nose, sure, but at the end of the day, I laughed. I had a fun time. I had a good time. The message is still important. I don't blame anyone for not liking the movie. I can see why somebody wouldn't, but I personally enjoyed it very much. Want to give a shout out to Dune, which did not crack my top 10, but was still such a grand scale sci-fi epic that it was just impossible to overlook as a contender for one of the best films of the year. Not one of my personal favorites, unfortunately, a little too slow at times. I cover a lot of that in my review, but still phenomenal. One that flew under a lot of people's radars is actually Worth. It was a Netflix film with Michael Keaton, and it was just really important philosophy being explored there, and that really carried the film for me. Obviously, some great performances, some great historical context for the film's narrative, but it's so well made. Also want to mention Being the Ricardos, Aaron Sorkin's next directorial feature. Again, the writing is on point. The directing is really on point. It's such a fascinating narrative. And I mean, Sorkin's writing, I'm just a sucker for it. You can't go wrong. And then just a quick shout out to the somewhat surprising inclusion of The Last Duel, just because I saw the trailer for this, did not think it would be interesting at all. I think pretty much everybody thought House of Gucci was going to be the better Ridley Scott film this year, and look how that turned out. But The Last Duel was such a great medieval film. It was in the top 10 for a long time, but unfortunately it just couldn't crack it for my ranking at the end. I just looked through and I'm like, it's got to be just outside, but it is still an excellent film that I would recommend anybody check out if they haven't seen. All right, folks, but kicking us off with the top 10 is actually going to be A Quiet Place Part 2. And while certainly being in the top 10 is a feat, an achievement in its own right, this one feels a little bit less like an achievement, just because it has kind of fallen as time has passed. It started out as number 1 when it came out. It remained there for a while, but just the more I thought about it, the less I kind of liked it. It's still a very well-made thriller, one that I very much enjoyed. Maybe it doesn't do too much to differentiate itself from the first year. I really like the opening scene, but then everything after that almost becomes sort of like a blur. Still very well made, still cracked the top 10, but doesn't do as much to reach higher than the other films on this list. Coming in at number 9, keep the pitchforks hidden, folks, but it's actually going to be Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, this is a film I enjoyed. It is the highest MCU film of the year for me, but it's lacking. It's a little bit lacking, just because I feel like it definitely prioritizes the fan service too much in a way that even, Endgame comparisons. I think Endgame brilliantly weaves together the narrative with the fan service. I'm not saying No Way Home doesn't. It certainly does at parts, but you can definitely feel the emphasis on fan service here, whereas I think Endgame was also just such a fantastic conclusion to this arc established over, a decade. No Way Home, very fun film, very satisfying. But I would encourage you even to just, for some self-reflection, if you really enjoyed the film, if you walk out the theater thinking this is the best MCU film, do some reflection and think, do I still feel that way all these weeks later? And I think a lot of it is recency bias. I'm not saying it's the case for everyone. I'm sure some will still have it as their favorite. And it's a good movie. It's number 9. It's just not higher. Coming in at number 8 is going to be The Eyes of Tammy Faye. This was another underrated film this year. It was, hilarious, but also just such a fascinating drama, had a fascinating story. But the real key here are the 2 brilliant, absolutely brilliant lead performances from Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield as Jim and Tammy Baker. remarkable all around. Everything about this film is well done. I'm really shocked at the reception it kind of got. If you look it up, you'll see it's really not the most favorable reception. But I found it to be very enjoyable, hilarious, and, you know, some phenomenal acting showcases. Folks, coming into number 7 is going to be Judas and the Black Messiah. This is one of the earlier releases this year, the second earliest release on this list in February, and it's just so... I love historical movies, guys. You can clearly tell from this list, if you didn't know already, because this is just such a fascinating look at this time period in history. I think the Black Panthers are such an interesting and nuanced group. I actually did a documentary sort of about them on my main channel. If you want to check that out, that should be up there. But Judas and the Black Messiah explores this interesting story that very few people honestly know about, told brilliantly, some great direction, some great cinematography, some great acting. A remarkable, this is, you know, sort of the pinnacle of historical film storytelling. It doesn't get a lot better. Coming into number 6 is going to be The Power of the Dog. This film has been getting raves. I personally am of the opinion that this will be the next Best Picture winner. But The Power of the Dog is so masterfully told by director Jane Campion. Again, what more can I say besides the acting? Oh my God, the beautiful cinematography. Something that really jumped out to me here is the sound. The sound design is so on point. The score from Johnny Greenwood, everything about this film is just masterful. It's one of the best films I've seen in a long time, one of the most well-made films I've seen in a long time. Certainly not my favorite. You know, it is more of a slow burn, but you're just gripped. You're gripped at everything going on. I was just astounded watching this film. Just looking at everything, whether it's a Benedict Cumberbatch all-timer performance, or the brilliant way Jane Campion manages to tell this story throughout the different chapters. My God, just perfection. Coming in at number 5, folks, is going to be The Father. Some count this as a 2020. I count this as 2021 per my rules, which is I didn't get a chance to see it until 2021, nor did most of the public. But The Father is such a heartbreaking story. And the thing that really elevates it is just how unique a concept it is. The way it's able to explore this difficult subject in such a fascinating way so as to put us in the shoes of Anthony Hopkins' character. Again, really, this is just becoming commonplace with these top 10 films, but the acting is some of the best you will just ever see. Some remarkable acting from these, you know, two main performers, and just such a story, a brilliant story. If you haven't seen this film, I would encourage you to, just for the experience alone of how they manage to tell the story of a man losing his grip on reality. Well, coming in at number 4 is going to be Bo Burnham Inside. Now, I have some problems with it in the sense that, you know, it does drag on the more it goes. The shtick gets a little bit old, as I said in my review. But come on, guys, it's just so. The fact that one person really did all of this is astounding because it's hilarious. The music is so. Is there a single bad song in the entire special? Brilliantly made, just genius. Each sketch managing to capture such a different part of the society we live in today. He has such a grip on the world that we live in and is able to call it out, to point it out to us. Bo Burnham Inside is a funny ride that is just well made to boot. You know, even as a comedy special would be fine, but it manages to tell its own story, its own narrative, and really capture the audience that way. Really amazing cinematography. Again, the songs are sort of front and center here, and it makes sense, but all of them are bangers, and Bo Burnham Inside is a great special. Folks, coming in at number 3, really just shocking. This wouldn't happen in any other year, I'm sure. January release. But, you know, the Oscars extended their deadline this year, so it sort of makes sense. But One Night in Miami, a film I'm just absolutely in love with, because it takes these 4 figures, all of which are so damn fascinating, even outside of the story. But man, they're just written to be they're amazing. They're amazing characters, and the way that they flow off of each other. They each have their own dynamic with each other. They each have their own perspective on the issue being debated. These feel like real people that I am watching have conversations with, but they're not. They're characters that are being directed and written to convey different ideas. I mean, the way I'm saying it sounds so simplistic, but you really can't know until you've seen the film, because the way they do it is just remarkable. Remarkable. These four legends in history that I'm personally captivated with, even outside of the movie again, but that are just made so much more interesting and better as a result of each other in this film. Please watch it if you haven't. I love it. Folks, coming in at number 2. God, it was close. It really was close. But it's going to be No Time to Die. My most hyped film of the year going in. The one I thought would take the number 1 spot. The one I for sure thought would take the number 1 spot after I saw it. Is a brilliant conclusion to Daniel Craig's arc. It is my second favorite Daniel Craig Bond film. And it is everything I could have possibly wanted. It's an emotional conclusion. It's got some amazing action with just such fun storytelling. The characters here, you have the villain with some complaints, but it is just such a ride. It's a blockbuster. Even without, this being Daniel Craig's last ride, it just feels like such a fun journey, a fun film. But especially with that added note, it makes it feel all the more personal. And I loved it. I loved every second. I'm so glad that this is the send-off that we got. I couldn't have asked for anything better. No Time to Die coming in a second. But folks, coming in at number 1 is going to be the best treat cinema received this year from its greatest working director, Steven Spielberg, West Side Story. A retelling of such a classic. Some people will push back against that because it's an adaptation of the play, not the old movie specifically, but just manages to improve on it in every single way. Every single set piece, every musical set piece is just so fun to watch, so brilliant. And it's a timeless narrative, really, that these actors elevate, that Spielberg elevates. The film is such a blast, but also is just such a good story in its own right. Again, obviously Tony Kushner, the writer here, deserves so much credit for it, for revitalizing it. But again, it is just the fact that it's also such a classic story, starting with Romeo and Juliet, and then of course the original West Side Story, now leading to this one, where they are able to modernize it in a way that makes it super refreshing. I had always had my faith in Spielberg. I know some people were skeptical, they don't want to remake whatever, yada, yada, yada. But this man just turns every adaptation he touches into gold, in my opinion. And West Side Story is no different. It has easily become one of my favorite of his films, and it has to take top prize for films in 2021. West Side Story is an amazing conclusion to this phenomenal year of films that is 2021, and my God, what a film it is. All right, folks, that's my top 10 of 2021. Again, incredibly grateful that my channel is what it is today. We made it a whole year at the very minimum. I hope to continue this in 2022. I'm sure the channel will look different in many ways. I'm not sure I'll be able to keep up the same release schedule as I did on the early days, but I do hope to keep reviewing, some of my favorite films that I see this year. Folks, I am looking forward to seeing all of you in 2022. We're in 2022 now, but I am looking forward to seeing you come back. Please come back, because the content will keep coming. Folks, I've been EDPC Reviews. You've been amazing. This year has been 2021, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.